I watched people like make friends, kiki it up together, go out and hang out with each other. And I was like, well, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not figuring this out? And it seemed like it's understood that we humans need social connections, we need friendships, we need people and relationships around us, but it's never really explained to us how to do that. It just seems like everybody else knows how to do it. And if you raise your hand, hey, I don't know what's going on, you're a dummy. You don't know.
Welcome to the Bounce Back Generation podcast. People talk about creating good relationships, making friends, and finding a romantic partner, but they don't really tell you how to do that. Not to mention how you deal with the rejection that can often follow that desire for connection. That's exactly what our guest, Coach Lee Hopkins, is here to talk about today. Look, there are not enough mental health professionals for all of us. If we're going to get healthy, we must heal as a community and help each other. Bounce Back Generation is a youth-centered nonprofit that creates and shares tools that build emotional resilience. We all have a role to play in constructing good mental health environments where we can learn about ourselves, help one another, and heal the planet. We seek to uplift the perspectives of the historically oppressed and anyone fighting for equality and justice. With respect for science and the wisdom of our elders, the Bounce Back Generation podcast explores resilience, overcoming trauma, and the science behind personal growth. I'm Jennifer Dillon. Coach Lee Hopkins is an expert in helping people build more fulfilling social connections in both their personal and professional lives. Whether you're looking to expand your social circle or build deeper connections with those around you, he believes that authenticity is the key to success. By embracing one's true self and learning to communicate from a place of honesty and vulnerability, you can form the kind of connections that will enrich your life and bring you joy. He owns a social connections coaching company called Patterns of Possibility, where he helps his clients find fulfilling social connections and meaningful relationships with a simple 3-step process. Thank you, Coach Lee, for being here. I can't tell you how many questions we all have because I think relationships is the most complicated, the most desired, the most important part of most of our lives. It's a thing that we don't often get right, and it gives us so much pain and angst sometimes and brings us so much joy. I want to just start out with, how did you get into this kind of work? What brought you into becoming a coach, a relationship coach?
It's because you touched on it a bit right there, the pain and angst of relationships. I've just suffered through trying to create meaningful relationships and friendships and connections for my entire life. And what happened for me, my origin story, if you will, is that I grew up in a small town in Ohio and was really trying to connect with people. I watched people like make friends, kiki it up together, go out and hang out with each other. And I was like, well, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not figuring this out? And it seemed like it's understood that we humans need social connections, we need friendships, we need people and relationships around us, but it's never really explained to us how to do that. It just seems like everybody else knows how to do it. And if you raise your hand, hey, I don't know what's going on, you're a dummy. You don't know. And so that started off my journey, is just being stuck and not understanding how to make real connections with people. And this carried on throughout my childhood and figuring out if I do something, if I did something, if I was something, that people will like me. And it turned out that wasn't the case. And when I discovered what really makes real connections, I couldn't keep it to myself. I just can't keep it to myself. I have to tell everybody about it.
Why is it that when you try, I had the same experience when I was younger, you try to do what the cool kids do and you try to fit in and it doesn't work? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, I really believe it's just because we all have our own preferences. We all have our own preferences and experiences, and we want to be able to express that. And sometimes when you show up as your authentic self, because one of the things that I was told is that you just have to be yourself and then you'll make friends. No, I thought that what I heard them say was, if you be yourself, everybody will like you. That just wasn't the case. That's just not the case. But it is true. If you are your authentic self, then you will find your tribe. You will find people. There's just a bunch of garbage and other things that you have to go through in order to find those people. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of distrust. There's a lot of all the icky stuff that we have to go through in order to find those real people. And sometimes we get stuck because we start being our authentic self, and someone over there says, I don't like that. And we're like, oh no, I have to not be myself anymore because I want you to be around me. And so we get stuck in those situations, but it's really a big illusion. It really isn't where you really want to be. And getting through that mindset and being able to do the difficult task of feeling rejected and sitting with that feeling to find your tribe, to find the people that really care about you is really tough. And again, no one has taught us how to do that.
Yeah, rejection is very painful. So what do you do when you are rejected? You're rejected for being yourself. You're rejected for not being yourself. Like whatever you do isn't good enough for the people that you want to accept you. How do you handle that?
Ooh, well, you cry a lot. I've cried a lot. Be really in touch with your feelings about it, because of course it's recognizing that people have their own preferences, and you also have your own preferences. They're allowed to have their preferences, and you're also allowed to have your preferences and your feelings about the experience. If they're going to reject you, I put myself in this mindset, well, I want to be around people who want to be around me. I want to be around people who celebrate me, who express the same kind of joy that I do, who's not going to make fun of me because I like Pokemon, or if I want to go play a video game, or if I want to watch a particular type of anime. All those geeky, silly things that I like to do, I want to be able to share that with other people, and they're going to reject you. Not everybody likes those things. And so to answer your question, handling that rejection is realizing that your expression of yourself is good enough. It's hard to do because no one else is telling you that it is. But the expression of yourself is good enough. It is fulfilling to you, and it's not necessarily for anybody else around you.
I love that. I remember being in like 11th grade and not having any friends because we had just moved. And I got so much out of that year of just being me and not like I built this kind of like eggshell shaped thing around me that said, I'm just going to be myself. And it doesn't matter if people don't like me because I knew we were going to move again. And it's like, I don't need to make friends. I just need to go to school and put my head down. But it was probably one of the best things that happened because I developed a friendship with myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, I think, what you're saying, right? Like you just enjoy being you, even if like the whole world doesn't love it. You love yourself to the point that you like, I appreciate the fact that I'm the only one who, whatever, listens to this band or likes to wear clothes like this or whatever. Just revel in it.
Absolutely. That's absolutely 100% correct. That's the way I'm talking about it. And I get that it's hard to do because like one of four things will happen when you are your authentic self. And this is from my experience. What I've discovered is that number one, you're going to get rejected. People are going to tell you, I don't like that. I don't like it. Get away from me. That's stupid, or whatever kind of insult. They're not going to express the same joy that you have for it. Number two, they're just going to completely ignore you. And that doesn't feel good either. No one wants to be ignored. And number three, which is the reason why most of us decide that we're not going to show up as our authentic self, we're not going to listen to the band, we're not going to tell anybody that we listen to that band or wear those t-shirts that we enjoy, is because people will actively try and stop you from expressing that joy. That's the third one. But the other possibility is that people will be attracted to it and they will like it and they will seek you out and they'll be interested because, man, they've been waiting for somebody to talk about those things that you're interested in. They've been waiting for you. They've been waiting. But it's really hard to see that because 3 out of 4 times, it's a no. It's a no.
And it's almost like those are the filters to get you to the authentic relationship, right?
Yeah.
The one that works, and because they recognize you for you. Let's talk about that. How do you test whether a relationship is authentic? Is it that it's a good relationship?
It's a good relationship. It starts from within, like you talked about in your 11th grade, where you are spending time with yourself and learning more about yourself and things that are good and interesting to you. You really have to start there. Think about the things that bring you joy. If you're not sure, if you're always looking for approval from other people, it's time to create some space. It's time to look away from them for approval and look in the mirror for it. So what are those things that bring you joy? What are those things that are exciting? Your history, your hobbies, your habits, those ideas that you have, the things that you do, what are those things that bring you joy? We have to start there. So focus on those things. And then two, start expressing those things. And we just talked about how scary that is to express those things. We want to express them, but we don't need to express them in a huge, tremendous, momentous way. You don't have to burst out of the closet with confetti and glitter and all kinds of stuff saying, here I am, I'm in your face, I don't care if you like it or not. You don't need to do that. You just need to be. So when you're interacting with other people, just share a little bit about that thing that brings you joy. And what you're looking for is their reaction or response to it. All this authentic connection is about you. It's about you and how you feel about when you share something with them, how they respond to it. And they actually have a little 4-step way to share things with people that will help you feel more connected, or check for that, because you don't want to be super vulnerable with people knowing that you could get hurt.
Yeah. And we should, if you want to do that now, can you share your website so people can check it out?
Oh yeah, you can check out this at patternsofpossibility.com. I have the story method, the 4-step story method called, or 4-part story method. It's called the GIST story method. So when you share these 4 elements of yourself, or share these 4 elements in a story with someone, you're able to see whether or not they're worthy of being closer to you. You just give them a little bit, of taste of who you are. Yeah, a little taste of who you are. And you watch for their response, and you'll see, is it safe? Is it how they respond? So it's all about you testing, sharing, seeing if you like the response, and then moving forward if you do. The 4 parts is sharing your joy, sharing what's important to you, sharing something you're secure about, and sharing the truth. Now, what it is, it's like you're sharing your story, a story of some kind, and it has to contain those 4 parts. Something that's fun, joyful to you, something that's important to you, something that carries a little bit of weight, doesn't have to be really intense, something that you're secure about. That means, security means that if you share it, however they respond, you're not going to feel differently about it. Mm-hmm. You're not going to want to change your story. The joy of your story doesn't disappear because they disapprove. Mm-hmm. And then you have to make sure that it's truthful. So it's a true story about an experience that you've had. And Jennifer, you just shared something that was similar about your 11th grade story. I think that it was joyful because you discovered something about yourself. It was important to you because it changed the way you shape relationships. And you're secure about it because you shared it without batting an eye. And of course, it's the truth. It's the truth. So it could be something really small and interesting to you. Like, I used to play Dance Revolution a whole lot when I was a kid. I didn't say when I was a kid. When I was like in college, I would spend all my money on Dance Revolution. It's a joyful experience to me, and it was super important to me. And secure about telling you, and it's truthful. I actually petitioned to get the Dance Revolution prices changed because I was so adamant about it. I was so adamant about getting those prices changed so it could be cheaper. But somebody might make fun of me for it. Somebody might say, "Well, you have anything better to do?" No, I enjoyed it, and I'm okay with sharing it.
That's a very valuable thing to do. I don't know, did they change the prices?
They did. They certainly did. Yeah, they did.
Wow.
I sat down and I spent time in front of that machine telling people, we are petitioning. We want them to change the price, so please don't put money in the machine. And after a couple of weeks, they changed it. Yeah. So it wasn't just me.
Wow.
It was some other people helping too.
Yeah, but
But
that's very impressive
yeah,
because it's money and, who wants to give it money? But yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So I was a big enough geek. I was so enthusiastic about it that I wanted something to change that way. And I put my time and energy into it. And there's something like that for you all too, that you can
Yeah.
share with another person.
What advice would you give to someone who says, look, I have this terrible crush on someone and they don't notice me or they don't like me or I'm afraid to approach them or they've rejected me? Well, how do you get through stuff like that?
Those are some really intense emotions, that feeling of rejection. So I like to handle this in two parts because there's one where you haven't actually made a move. It's all imagined that they're going to reject you. They're not going to like something about you, but you don't really know. You don't really know. So you might be stuck there with thinking, oh man, like, they're not going to care about me. They're going to reject me because of this, and that. But the only way to really discover it is to have a conversation with them. And I know that's intense, right? Like, I would just go up to somebody. It's easy for me. If I'm not in the moment right now, it's easy for me to say, go talk to them. That you're going to do that. You're not going to do that right away. You're not going to feel comfortable with that. So I read a book called, I think, How to Be Yourself, which really gave some actionable steps. I cannot remember the name of the author, but she actually gave actionable steps to dealing with the awkwardness and anxiety. And what I'd recommend is that you really discover what those feelings are underneath, like underneath. So I'm a big fan of just getting those emotions out, whether you're talking it out, whether you're recording it on a video and you're saying it to yourself, or whether you're writing it down in a journal. Get those feelings out about being rejected. So before you even approach them, try to lessen that intense feeling of rejection by just putting it out somewhere else.
So you get it out and maybe even think of the worst case scenario. They reject me and the whole school sees it and they all laugh at me.
Yes.
Why would I ever think that they would love me? And just play it all out so that you have it and then you put it
And then,
somewhere.
yeah, you get it all out and you put it somewhere. And then while you're getting those feelings out, let's bring in something else. Let's bring in your imagination about what could happen. What will you say? Practice and rehearse what will you say to them, because that is very, very powerful. If you're stuck in your feelings about it, you're going to react upon those feelings. You're going to cringe, or you're going to shrink when you walk in or connect with them or see them. That feeling of rejection is going to take over. But if you practice being confident, or practice just writing out one line or saying it to yourself in a video, this is what I want to say to them. I'm going to say it to them. This is what I want to say to them. I'm going to say it to them. And it'll reprogram you so that you can get over that feeling of rejection and create a new feeling, like of curiosity. Let's see what happens when I tell them this. I hope this happens, but if it doesn't, then you go and you process. Those feelings. But that's what I'd recommend to do. Get those feelings out first. Worst case scenario, look at those worst case scenarios and just get the feelings about those out and rewrite a different story for yourself. And the same with being rejected. You also have to get those feelings out. It already has happened. Was it like the worst case scenario? What are you going to do now? If you believe something bad is going to happen, or you're going to be rejected or laughed at, explore those feelings. Discover what is really there. And you'll likely find that this is temporary. You'll likely find that it'll be over soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have such a fear of rejection. It's like a death, it's you can't go there. And I think what I hear you saying is you have to allow yourself to approach these feelings and get into them and understand that part of it is just the way that we're built as human beings to be connected, and we thrive on it. We need it. And so there's a part of us that is subconsciously seeking it out and is very powerful. And then there's a part of us that wants that person. And that's a more fluctuating thing. And I know I've had crushes before in the past. And one day I thought they were the greatest thing ever. The next day I was like, oh, they're not that great. I'm interested in someone else, And so you think they're really much more intense than they really are.
Yeah.
And so if you can face up to some of that feelings of rejection, you can pass through them and on to the other side.
Absolutely.
I love that. How do you set boundaries in a relationship? And why do we need boundaries? Let's start there. Why do we need boundaries in a relationship? What is it about relationships that causes us to need boundaries?
Boundaries. Well, when most people think of boundaries, I think the pop culture of boundaries is that you have to tell people what you will and will not accept or how they can and cannot behave. And we get boundaries mixed up with rules. Rules and boundaries are two different things. Rules are these impositions and demands on other people's behaviors. What you're not going to do is raise your voice. What you're not going to do is this. I won't tolerate that. You can't do this in my space. Those are rules. Those are ways that other people might have to behave in your space.
Yeah.
But we don't like those. Nobody's going to tell me those things. I don't like them, and we're not going to listen to them.
Yeah.
So we're going to separate that and focus on what boundaries really are. And I think boundaries are the shape of you. I say that they're the shape of you. They are actions and behaviors that you and you alone will take in a specific situation. So if somebody is raising their voice at you, what you will do is leave. That's what you're going to do because you're the only person that you can control. What you will do is not talk to them anymore. Whatever it is that you will do, but boundaries dictate how you will behave. And the reason why we need those is because they make you a predictable person. They make you a safe person. They make you clear on how you will behave in a situation with other people or interaction with connections, with relationships with other people. So if people don't text you back when you've been texting them for a long time, what are you going to do? Well, you can either continue to try and text them and reach out to them, or you can say, hey, you know what? This doesn't feel good that you're ignoring me. This doesn't feel good. I don't like it. So what I'm going to do is not text you. What I'm going to do is not even harass you about it, not even reach out to you about it. I'm just going to pretend like you don't exist to me because you're treating me like this and it doesn't feel good. I like to feel good. That's why we need boundaries. The sense is protect our peace, and it teaches people how we want to be treated. We don't have to impose on them. We just have to move the way we want to, and other people will respond.
I loved that. I've never thought of it like that. So it's like a rule is something that, I'm going to punish you if you don't follow my rules kind of thing. That's how I think of it. Like, you're not allowed to get in my car with that coffee, right? You could drive off or whatever. But a boundary is about you and what kind of your values. If I text you 5 times and you don't text me back, that's just a value that I have, that I care about myself enough that I want to have communication that is open and, respectful. So I'm going to remove myself. I'm not going to punish you. I'm not going to tell you, you broke my rules about texting.
Right.
You just say, this doesn't, I love that. This doesn't feel right for me.
Right. Yeah. And even in the case of someone getting in your car with coffee, because I can imagine, but whatever you're experiencing with that. So let's say someone is getting in the car with coffee and you don't want that to happen. The setting a boundary or speaking your boundaries, rather, there's no setting. They're speaking your boundaries. I feel uncomfortable with you having the coffee in the car. And if you want to bring coffee in this car, well, you can't. You can't. I want to say you can't bring coffee in this car, but I'd be really upset and afraid, or I'd be really upset and afraid that you'd get something on my carpet if you brought coffee in the car. I'd rather you not do it. And this is just you stating how you feel about them bringing the coffee in the car. You did not impose on them that they couldn't, but the ball is in their court now. You're clearly telling them how you feel about the action that they're taking, and they get to decide, and you get to see clearly what they're going to do. If they're like, it's not a big deal, just put the coffee in the car, or stop complaining about it, it's just coffee, then you can see that they don't really care about how you feel. And that's something to raise your eyebrow, something to pay attention to. If it's really important to you, especially if it's something that's really important to you.
So here's a big one. How do you know when it's time to break up with someone? And then how do you get over that? I think breakups are these horribly difficult and traumatic, even when you're the one who wants to break up, but especially when someone breaks up with you and you're in love with them, or you thought they were your best friend or whatever.
Oh boy, that's such a loaded question. That both of them, like, how do you break up? How do you deal with the breakup, and how do you recover from it? Because you're right, it is really difficult when you are really attached to someone. You believe that they understand you and they care about you and you just don't want to let them go. You found that person, especially if you tried for so long. Finally, somebody understands you. And then rah, something blindsides you and they've got to break up or you've got to break up with them. I've had too many of these experiences in my life. I had to break up with
Same.
someone. Yeah, right. I had to break up all of my breakups. Actually, all of my relationships, I think except one, they've all dumped me. They were all just like, Lee, no. And I share that with you now because I can laugh about it. No, they weren't right for me at the time. And I was the last person to know it. It just seemed to be I was the last person to know it. I found something much better later on in life after I've spent some time away from them. How do you know it's right to break up with that person? Again, the focus is on you and bringing you your own joy, setting those boundaries and understanding who you are. It's all about understanding what brings you joy and how people move in your space that brings you joy. Recognizing that you can't control them. You can't control them. You can only tell them, state your boundaries. This is how I feel about the experience I'm having with you. This is how I feel about you not calling me at least once a week. This is how I feel about us not going on a date night or us not texting each other. And this is what I would hope we would do because it's really important to me. Boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whoever you're dating, friend, it's really important to me. You can express that to them, and if they ignore that, then it's a really nice red flag to let you know. A lot of us, what we like to do, I am guilty of this too, is be like, well, they're busy or they just, something's going on. I understand, and we say, I understand, but I want them. You want them to do this and they're not doing it. It's really hard to be able to cut it off and be able to see. But really, if you focus on what brings you joy, if it's exciting for you to get that message and you want that from your partner and you've expressed that and are not doing it, it's time to let go. It's time to let go. It's hard, but it's time to let go. And you can point back at it. You're just like, well, I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to. How many times have you felt disappointment and frustration and have tried to change this person or tried to express it? And what have they done in response? Nothing? Have they belittled you? Have they told you it's not a big deal? Have they just did whatever they wanted to do? How do you feel about that? So the focus is on you, paying attention to the things that bring you joy. So if they're not, if being with them isn't, then it's time to release and let go because you can do bad all by yourself.
Yeah, right.
You can do all these things yourself. Yeah.
I think also what I realized in my relationships that didn't work was that I brought a lot of my own childhood experiences. I think, and for many of us, we didn't have great relationships that were attached. And attachment means that we learned from our parents or from our caregivers how to love and be loved. And when there's a break in that for various reasons, and there was in my household, we had a difficult time in understanding myself and my siblings, what it meant to have a healthy, loving relationship. And so I think all of us have struggled a little bit with it as we grow up. And I think a lot of people do because you learn from that early relationship things like, I should expect to be cared for, or I should, if I need something, that it will be provided and I don't have to do a bunch of tricks in order to get the things that I need. And then you carry that into your adulthood. So what really helped me, and it sounds like this is a lot of what you're teaching, is you got to get to know yourself and figure out what are the true needs that you have, and recognizing that you can't just find someone out in the wild to fix those things that happened to you that someone else did. And you're the one who has to fix them first, and then things work out better.
Absolutely.
And also the joy of being alone and having that space to work on yourself. I have not had a relationship in a long time because I have my child, and I've always felt like I need to focus on him and not be out like dating and things. That's just my thing. I don't think everybody else has to follow that, but that's just my thing. And also, and I found that it's actually life is kind of great when you don't have to worry about, are they going to call or is he going to see someone else?
Say it again. Life is kind of great.
Life is kind of great. And I think I was going to say especially women, but I think male, female, whoever, wherever you are in life, if particularly when you're young, just know that it gets easier. You figure stuff out. You get more comfortable with yourself. You accept things that you should accept. You learn how to not accept things. And you know the difference. It's like that great, you know,
Yes.
that saying, learn to accept the things I cannot change and change the things I can. And it just
Mhm.
becomes more clear.
It does. It certainly does. And I I'd like to say that I also haven't been in a relationship for a very long time. And I find it to be a bit exhausting because I just like you agree too. But it's exhausting
True.
because I do want to demonstrate that I care about my partner, and they come with a whole bunch of things. They're a whole nother person with their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. And I would expect if I'm a good partner, the kind of partner I want to be, rather, to be connected to them, I want to be able to hold space for them. And I want them to hold space
Hmm.
for me too. It takes energy to be able to do that. I have my own feelings to deal with, and I need to sort those things out as well. I want to be well connected, and I want to talk about things that are interesting to them, but if not interesting to me and they want to share it with me, it takes a bit of work to connect with them on that. It takes a bit of work. And it's a lie to say that, oh, you're just going to magically connect with each other and stay together. You're going to work some stuff out. It's going to be ups and downs. And it's an investment to be able to do that. And if you don't know yourself, if you don't know how you're going to respond or behave in those situations, it's going to make it even more difficult.
Yeah.
Carrying your attachment style into the relationship too, being aware of those things. So the more work you can do on yourself before you get into a relationship with another person, oof, you'll have the best relationship. You will.
It really, I think that's so important. And not only, first of all, you're going to have a great relationship with yourself to always fall back on. And
Always.
I can't say enough how important that is to develop that.
Yes.
And then you, like you said, you create that space where other people can come in. And also, I think what I learned along the way is that there are lots of different kinds of relationships. I actually have a really good friend who we've been friends for, I don't know, 30 years or something. And we always sign off L3, meaning level one is like what you have with your children, you know, it's that unbreakable bond. And then you have level two, which is the romantic love. And then you have love level three, which is that friendship that is so easy that you know you can, whatever you are, whatever you do, even if you fight, it's going to be okay.
Not
And I love that, developing those kinds of relationships with friends, and just recognizing that you can have lots of different types of relationships in your life. And sometimes it can feel like if I don't have a romantic relationship, then I'm missing something so huge, but that's not necessarily true. I do want to just talk about the fact that you have had a major transition in your life. And if you want to tell us about how that transition connects to your sense of identity in terms of having relationships with other people.
I think that you mean the transition from female to male as a trans person.
That is what I mean. Exactly.
My company, I'll start about my company is called the Patterns of Possibility. It's because I've had these many different transitions. I believed that I needed to find my tribe. So I moved from Ohio to California, then finally to Chicago, where I am now, thinking that each transition was going to create something different in my life and I'm going to meet the new people that I needed to have these really close friendships. That didn't happen. And I thought the reason why, well, was because I wasn't being my authentic self. And I transitioned when I moved to Chicago almost 6 months after I moved to Chicago. This was the time Caitlyn Jenner was coming out, and I understood what being trans was. It was something that I had thought about for my entire life, as far back as I can remember. When am I going to turn into a guy? When is that going to happen? That was my thought process. And then I thought, since I didn't make the friendships in Ohio or California, and I'm moving to this new place in Chicago, I must have to transition in order to find the people that need me or that care about me. I'm not being my authentic self. And so I made this transition from female to male. And it happened more smoothly than many other people because I had a job who helped me pay for it. I had access to a group of people as a support system. I've had medical care, all those things. And my transition was like within 6 months. When I decided, I had top surgery and I had my name changed and I had all those things. And I knew it doesn't happen really fast for people, like for most people. And so I do want to acknowledge that as part of my story too. But I transitioned and I thought the world's going to see me differently and I'm going to find my friends. And no, it didn't happen. It didn't
Uh,
happen.
you would think that
Mhm.
like the trans community is protective and insular, and there's only so many people, so you're automatically part of this club,
No,
right?
I know.
Doesn't work that way.
1% of the population. I was like, they've got to accept me, or this has got to be my tribe. And it wasn't even, there's a lot of highlighting about, back at the time when I transitioned, there was a lot of highlighting, of course, about cis men who transition to trans women, right? There's a lot of, and so there were plenty of groups and support for those people. But I found a group specifically for females or cis females to trans men. And I'm like, whoa, I was even more excited, Jennifer, about finding my tribe of people. But what happened was, as I discovered, we all grew up differently. We've all had different experiences. And so I get into the circle of people and I can't say anything right. I can't do anything right. Everything's politically correct and everything is new to me. And a lot of things I don't understand. Sure, I'm a trans man who has lived the trans experience, but I don't know anything else about anybody else's experience. And here I come into this space and I'm saying the wrong words and doing the wrong thing. I'm it, it's it just felt so backwards to me. And so I say that because I didn't understand. I was constantly on the outside of it. And again, in that experience with the circle, people were fundraising for their top surgeries. I didn't have to do any of that stuff.
Mhm.
And so my history of how I got into that space didn't necessarily line up. My values didn't necessarily line up with those people. The only thing that we had in common was that we were transgendered. That's it. And then
Yeah.
everything else disappeared. It's like being in a space full of other Black people. Sure, I'm Black and you're Black, but when we start talking to each other, we might be speaking a different language because how we grew up. Sure, I'm wearing glasses and you're wearing glasses, but whatever may have different prescriptions or ways we got the glasses. I don't know, but that one thing about our identities didn't unite us enough. It didn't unite us enough.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier on when we first met, that we have at Bounce Back Generation, we have these 6 things that are really important for our human development, to start how we grow up and how we kind of function through the world. And we call them our building blocks for resilience.
Mm.
I'm just going to go over them again. There's protection, having a safe place, relationship, which is what we're talking about now,
Mhm.
coping skills, having a whole bunch of coping skills that really work for you, ways to build confidence, belonging, which is why I
Mhm.
bring this up, and then storytelling, being able to talk about your experiences, which is what you're doing now. And I think that concept, there's a difference between, we say there's relationship and then there's belonging.
Mhm.
And they're different things, aren't they?
Yeah.
So relationship is more one-on-one, it's someone you can rely upon. Belonging is more open, but it's almost as necessary as relationships. And it looks like what you're talking about is you don't get to automatically belong just because you've had a shared experience.
Right. Exactly. And that was really, really one of the most difficult lessons to learn because I had transitioned and I'd done all the things. And it's not that I did them because I wanted to be a part of this group. I just thought it was what I needed to do to feel more like myself. And by the way, I do. There are no regrets. I don't want to return this body. It's awesome. I'm amazing. But
Mhm.
it's the idea that I thought that I was going to instantly belong to these people, to the group. And the belonging, I think, is in the sense of values and how you act in your values, how you show up in your values. And so that didn't show up for me, that didn't show up for them. And it gets harder when you don't really understand your values. So that's when I really had to start figuring out what really is important to me because I felt completely rejected. I just didn't belong in that space. And I end up leaving the space and connecting with more cisgendered people and realizing, oops, we still don't have the same values.
Mm-hmm.
So the value piece has just really become important, more so important than the physical piece, more
Yeah.
so than what I look like. And yeah,
Yeah, I think like I could join a group because we all like to crochet, for example.
yeah,
And then I joined the group and then I realized that everyone just talks shit about each other all the time. And that's not what I want to do. I don't want to sit around and crochet and talk shit about people that live in the neighborhood or something. Yeah, I mean,
right.
that's not what there is no crochet good group in my I'm just making this up. But that makes a lot of sense. And to expect that belonging to a certain group is going to automatically make you feel connected is not necessarily the case. And I think it brings up a lot of issues around loneliness and why we feel lonely when we feel like, oh, I should feel okay because I'm part of all these groups. But it really does come down to belonging as value-based and relationship-based.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The values, they have to be there. And the next step is to really discover what your values are. And that won't happen until you really have experiences and you're really paying attention to how you feel about those experiences that you have. Like we go back to that text message thing. I value someone having constant communication with me.
Mhm. Mhm. Same.
Yeah. And
Not
also,
to ask either that
right.
you don't have to respond to me immediately, but after 3 or 4 days, I'd like to hear back from you or whatever.
I think that, part of that in belonging is we want people to think of us fondly and just think about us. Like that's what I define as finding your tribe are people who care about your well-being. And so they're not thinking about you when some specific situation comes up, but they're like, this person is so interesting and fun and exciting and whatever. I just want to reach out to them. I want to see how they're doing, or I want to share
Yeah.
something with them. We want that kind of connection with other people. And I think that it shows up in the values, like in the sense of belonging.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what happens is if we don't feel that we deserve a certain level of kindness, respect, love, then we try to extract it from people
Yeah.
instead of just sitting in it and saying, this is what I expect. And I think that's it's a very fine line between I'm going to go out and find someone that loves me versus I'm going to sit here in myself and have a set of expectations that this person that comes in my life will treat me with kindness and respect. And I can be sort of flexible, but there are certain things that I cannot. Like,
Absolutely.
if you cheat on me or you are physically and emotionally harmful to me, those are things that we should all learn how to create those boundaries. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Say that. I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying there. Yeah, just sit and attract. You don't chase, you attract. You deserve
Right.
love. You know you do, and you know what it looks like. You know what love looks like. That's the
Yeah.
thing. What love looks like to you, what actions and behaviors. And I'm real big on the actions and behaviors because that's what happens in the space. Like we see people, we experience, we feel their actions and behaviors, and it feels like love to you. It feels, if it brings you joy to you, it feels like love. Yeah. So you have to know it, and it's just really hard to.
It is. And I do think that especially our kind of romantic movies and books and things like that really sends a message that there are only certain people that deserve it.
Mm.
Like there's these shining stars who get everything. And we have to come to the realization all of us deserve it. There is no difference between the amount of love that I deserve to have and the amount of love that you deserve to have, and everybody deserves love. It's not like that. It is that we block ourselves from receiving it by not having those things worked out among ourselves. But I see that so often, especially with younger people, that I'm not going to be the one because I'm not beautiful or I'm not tough enough or I'm not whatever it is that is the thing. I don't look like a Kardashian and my butt's not big enough. Things like that are just ridiculous. They have nothing to do with love.
Absolutely not. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Thank you. I have loved this conversation. I think I'm hoping that a lot of people hear what you have to say because I think your insights are incredibly valuable. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel like we should, or you would like to hear our audience to hear, or that you feel like they should know?
Sure. About transitioning, because I like to talk about that piece. And it is a huge, important value or experience that I've had that has shaped the way I look at life. It really has. And like I said, I thought that transitioning was going to help me find those people. I thought I was going to go up in this group of trans men and be all like bros. That that didn't happen. But some things that I did experience was, so I transitioned while I was working a corporate job, and I was the only female on the team until I transitioned. And so I remember having this experience where I would talk in meetings as a cisgendered woman, and people wouldn't really hear me. I didn't think people really heard me. It could have been that I was shy or whatnot, but eh. And then I transitioned and our team expanded a bit, and we had another female join the team, a cisgendered woman join the team. And I remember being in a meeting and she was saying something and I was listening, and a couple of guys in the meeting were like, no, blah, 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 not really acknowledging it. And then I repeated it. I just repeated it. That's all I did was repeat it. And they're like, good idea, Lee. What?
Can I just say, boom, this is what we've been saying. So thank you for bringing it up. That is the experience of so many women. And thank you for being witness to that for us.
It was absolutely wild. And they knew that I had transitioned, but there was just something. So I did experience that. And that there's some there is some privilege that comes with it. There's some privilege in being in places where I'm with all men and we're talking about women. Never talked about women that way, but wow, it's really different. And I used to look like a stud, short hair and baggy clothes and whatnot. They wouldn't talk that way around me, completely different. So I did understand that there is some privilege that comes with it and showing up in those spaces. I wasn't socialized as a cisgendered man, so when I started talking about my feelings and stuff like that, it raised some eyebrows. There's sometimes people used to say, well, I just thought you were gay. Like, okay. Okay. And sharing all these little details and fun experiences with you, because I realized that hiding the fact that I am transgendered, it really hurt my relationships, because I had learned that I had an experience where I was all excited that maybe 3 years into my transition, and I was in Chicago, was in therapy, and I talked about developing relationships with people, and I wanted friends. And I told them in my group therapy session that I'm going to go out and I'm going to make a friend. I'm going to have a positive mindset and attitude. I go to this comedy club and I point out somebody. I do the thing, positive mind experience, have a conversation. I'm intentional about that. And I want them to know that I'm transgendered, because I want to at least know if it's safe to share that, because I didn't want to hide that. I thought that's part of my truth. And I have a conversation with him. We talk for a bit, and I know, having a good time. I lean the conversation towards being LGBTQ and, trans people. And I'm like, talk about that a little bit. And he says, I've never seen a trans person before. He says that to me. I don't understand their experience, and I don't understand why anybody would ever want to. And I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity for me to connect, because he hadn't said anything that meant that he didn't like trans people, just didn't understand it. So I thought, I'm going to open up to him. And I share with him that I'm trans. And he just stops talking completely. And he leaves the entire venue, gone.
Oh.
Doesn't say anything else, gone. I was like, wow, that is rejection. There's rejection right there. And I thought, well, I never want to talk about being trans again. So then I don't for a bit. I get hired in a new job, and nobody knows about my transition. I make friends with this really cool guy, meet his wife and kids, and for 2 years he hadn't known. I talked to him on the phone, outside of work, all kinds of stuff, but he hadn't known. And then the pandemic hit. Well, no, it was before the pandemic. But I started dating. At this point in time, I hadn't dated anybody. But I started dating again, and I kept getting rejected because I'm trans, and some people don't want to date transgendered people. That's fine. I want to be with somebody who wants to be with me, right? And so I want to share with my really good friend that I'm getting rejected. And I tell him I'm getting rejected, but I don't tell him why. So he says, you're not that bad looking. I don't know what the deal is, but just keep trying. It's hard out there. I'm like, that doesn't feel good. I don't feel supported. And I didn't know I needed that support until I had this experience. I didn't know that. I share all this trans journey because it's different for everybody, but not everybody gets to know that you're trans. Not everybody gets to know those deep, important things about who you are. They just can't handle that light that you have inside. They're just not capable. They're going to leave you just like at the bar. It's okay. They're not there for that. They're there for you to kiki it up a little bit, have a good time. But those other people, when you find them, they're going to accept that deep truth about you. And it's up to you to reveal it to them slowly. Don't hide, because it's just going to make you feel more alone when you have an experience where you need to be supported.
Yeah. Well, you have the right to have layers to yourself.
Absolutely.
It's like a book. You can move first few pages, and then you slowly get into it, and then you're like, oh, wow, look at all this stuff that's in here.
I like that book analogy. Yes.
Yeah.
Some people only get to know the first chapter, and that's it.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if this is relevant, but I often think that people who can't go there with the concept of trans, it's kind of like some people just don't feel comfortable with gay because, they grew up with it and blah, blah, blah. But I think it feels too scary for them to go to think about those things. And I think it has a lot to do with their own sense of identity. If I think about it, then that makes me like that. And if I'm like that, then I'm going to be rejected. And that
absolutely. I think it's fear. Yes, it is super relevant. And if I could just share my point of view on this, is that I've watched that guy and his face just change when I told him, because he said he never seen a trans person before. And here I am right in front of him. I shook his world, his entire universe, all of his beliefs, because he just absolutely knew what a trans person looked like. He just absolutely thought he could identify one easily. No, you can't.
No. We're everywhere.
We're everywhere. You thought that you knew one thing about the way the world works for certain. You thought you knew there were just two genders. And now here I come just blowing everything up. Yeah. I get it. You can't handle me. I get it. All right.
Well, people get triggered. Their fear response gets triggered with the things that they don't understand and know. And I think that's a big issue. And I often think and ask people who are super tough, think about why you're so tough, why you can't go there with LGBTQ, or I have to have a big gun right beside me all the time. You are especially afraid.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And people who are not especially afraid can lower the drawbridge down over the moat and let some things in because they're not scared of everything. And I think that's a big transition that we need to have as a society. And, I have this thing where I think like we will know when we are helping children to have a happier, more resilient life when we can say, as the kindergartners, they've learned how to manage their fear. Instead of being driven by fear, we've taught them, and we're built, and we haven't learned how to do this yet, but this is one of the things that we're trying to do with Bounce Back Generation, is help people manage those fears so that they're not driven by the need to protect themselves and instead are driven by the need to connect.
Absolutely.
Feel more open to connect. All right, I'm going to wrap this up, and I have one question that we ask everyone, and that question is, who made a difference for you when you were growing up?
It made a difference for me when I was growing up. I was a middle child, and there was a woman who lived up the street. I was best friends with her son. We were just kind of around the same age. We played video games together, and I spent a lot of time hanging out at their place, and she allowed me to talk with her too. And she made a difference in my life. She's since passed, and I really appreciate her. But I didn't realize this when it was happening, but she paid attention to me, and she was interested in me. She let me talk to her about stuff. And that just wasn't the attention that I was getting at home. And it just helped me realize a bit that, wow, there was an adult that really cared about me. It felt like it. And my parents, they just weren't capable. They had their own things going on. But there was somebody else there who listened to me, and it seemed like they cared about me. So I carried that with me. It's really important, I think, in my formative years, me being a teenager.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And we ask that question because we want to remind people that you don't have to have the perfect parents or the perfect caregivers or the perfect situation. There can be just a great teacher or a great neighbor or the mom of a friend who just did small, we call them small, powerful things.
Yeah.
And they can sustain you for all of your life. And it's good for us to remember that we don't know how we impact people. And the kindness and attention and caring that we show to people can be this little seed that you've planted. And I think, Coach Lee, you've planted many seeds for many people right now that is going to help them to manage and have the better relationships that are more fulfilling for them that they are seeking, and especially that one with themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer.
Thank you, Coach Lee. Thanks for joining us. This has been the Bounce Back Generation podcast. Thank you to our guest, Coach Lee Hopkins. Our producer is Liam Donaldson, music by Jogging Turtle. Our upcoming podcasts are about topics that affect us all, like getting over shame, managing your nervous system, like feelings like anger and freezing up, looking at grief, death, and dying, finding our own identity, how to stop incessant worrying. And we introduce our cast of youth content creators who make Bounce Back Generation work. I'm Jennifer Dillon. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can visit our website at bouncebackgeneration.org or our media site that has a lot of tools that you can find and use, and videos and great stuff, and our podcast, of course. And that's at bbgtv.org. You can follow us on Instagram at Bounceback Generation, TikTok at BouncebackGen. If you have a story that you would like to share with us about your own emotional resilience journey, or you'd like to suggest a topic, you can send us an email at info@bouncebackgeneration, or you can call us at 415-570-8765 and follow the prompts to leave a clear message. Thanks for listening.